Do you find yourself distracted by how you could have done something better, how you should have done something better? Or maybe you get sidetracked thinking about the mistakes that you've made and that you could have just not made those mistakes and everything would be better. Are you just too hard on yourself? Guess what? Me too. Today I'm going to share how I've been working on not being so hard on myself, and I am right in the middle of this process, but I've been working on not being so hard on myself so I can move forward and get more done that matters. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm, episode 246 with me, Tara Swiger. Today we're going to talk about something I've been dealing with and that I've been getting so much feedback on: being hard on yourself. Being judgy, thinking you should just be better and do better and improve and optimize. So most of us want to be better, right? We want to get better at our business. We want to get better at parenting or relationships, house cleaning, whatever. Like there's something that you want to make better. We want to streamline, optimize, improve all the time. That is great and it can be useful, but not when it comes with a dose of beating yourself up over everything that needs to be improved and optimized. Not when it comes with judgment over what you haven't fixed yet. And not if you're getting so bogged down in what's wrong that you can't shift into action to make it right. Now, this is on my mind because a few days ago I posted on Instagram stories that I noticed I was being really hard on myself when it came to basically every parenting decision in front of me. I am always thinking, oh, I could have done that better. I should have reacted differently. Ugh, I wish I had stayed calmer. And what sparks this conversation is how I'm feeling about parenting decisions, but we're going to talk about all aspects of life and especially your business, because this is a podcast about your business. So you do not need to be a parent for this to be related to you. And I know many of you are saying, yes, I'm hard on myself too about a whole bunch of other things. So I am brand new at being a parent. For those of you who are just turning in when I record this, I have a foster daughter who's 2 years old. We've had her for just 2 months. So I am brand new at being a parent, and I think a lot of what I'm experiencing as a new parent is related to what you experience when you're new at anything. It certainly reflects the lessons I was learning when I was a brand new businesswoman way back in 2006. So when I posted on Instagram stories, I got a lot of replies to my question about being hard on yourself. I asked, what resources and ideas do you guys have? Because this is not sustainable. And I want to talk about the replies I got because they were super interesting and illuminating and helped me work out kind of a process for myself. I wanted to share them with the whole community, not just those of you who tune in on Instagram stories, because they represent two different ways of looking at the issue, and this might be how you've been thinking about it yourself. First, we need to talk about, what do I mean by being hard on yourself? What I'm talking about is when something happens, or you make a choice, or you didn't even realize there was a choice, and you have some outcome, and you think, I should have handled that better. I should have done that differently. I shouldn't have done X. I should have done Y. That is an example of being hard on yourself. One example that literally just happened when I started this recording and I went live in the Starship, which I always do when I record the podcasts, is they're doing yard work across the street. They're cutting down a huge tree. I don't know if you can hear the saw in the background or the beeping up of the truck they're using. They brought in a big dump truck and crane to get the tree branches. And I said to the Starship, ugh, if I just had this podcast episode written earlier this morning before they started the work and sat down to record it then and had everything done sooner, this wouldn't be in the background and it would have been better. And then, because I had just finished writing this episode, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being hard on myself. I'm beating myself up for not having been done 2 hours sooner to avoid this thing that I had no way of knowing when it was going to happen. And this is actually when I planned to record. So I did everything according to what I wanted to do. And yet there was just something unexpected that happened. So that's what I mean about being hard on yourself. And the thing is that just thinking I should have handled this better or I could have handled this differently is not necessarily a problem. You're going to have that a lot in your life, and it's going to help you come up with new solutions and new way of doing things. The problem comes in when there is judgment. I'm bad because X, I'm bad at business because I didn't pre-write this completely finished on Monday. Or the problem is with the intensity, when you're like, oh my God, I am the worst person because this was not rewritten. Sorry for yelling in your ear, those of you who are listening. And there's a problem if it's a frequency issue. If you can't move forward because you can't let go of the mistakes you made, or if your brain, a huge percentage of it is always taken up with beating yourself up, then that is a problem of frequency. So judgment, intensity, and frequency. I think that we all have these thoughts regularly, but we're on different places of the dial in the spectrum of intensity. Maybe for some of us it's really loud, especially depending on how we were raised, our framework for looking at the world. The voice that tells you should be better might be turned way up, or it might be turned way down. You might just sometimes think like, oh, I could have handled that a little differently. Your frequency might be turned up, or it might be turned way down. And the judgment, like you're a bad person or you're a good person because you did X or Y, that's going to be different based on your values and based on the things that you think are really important to being a good, worthy person. So I gave an example of one of the things. This is not the example I had written down, but it literally just happened when I sit down to record, is just like if I couldn't let it go, which happens a lot with my parenting decisions, I will just go over and over and over it. And by the way, I want to mention here that if you're having looping thoughts or intrusive thoughts, you may want to talk to a therapist. This may be a sign that you need to get help. It may just be normal stuff, but it may just be a sign that you need to get help. So just if your thoughts seem especially intrusive and like you're not able to let them go, even when you work through the process I'm going to share, talk to a therapist, talk to someone to get help. So that's what I mean by being hard on yourself. For me, it comes within the framework of my generalized anxiety disorder. So I just want to mention that some of the intensity and frequency that I'm talking about is because of my anxiety disorder. My anxiety brain runs away with itself. And that's why it's a real problem for me. So when I posted about it, I got two different kind of replies. The first, about half the replies said, "This is what motherhood is. Get used to always feeling not good enough." The second half of the replies said, "Here are some resources for negative self-talk. Stop being so hard on yourself. You wouldn't talk to a friend this way." Different things about basically challenging negative self-talk or learning to talk kinder to yourself. And both of these kinds of replies were really interesting because they showed two different perspectives. One perspective is, this is how it always is. And another perspective is, you can change this. Here's how to change this. That was really useful to hear both of them. And if you're one of the people who replied, I want to thank you, no matter what your reply was, for talking to me about this. It really helped me clarify the way I'm dealing with this and how I'm thinking about it. So, and I know, by the way, I know that those of you who said, get used to it, or maybe when I was talking about it, you thought, yeah, that's just what motherhood is. What you mean is that I'm not alone, that you experience it too, and so do all of your friends, and that part of doing anything new, and especially in women's lives, almost every aspect of women's life, there's a constant sense that it should be better, that it could be better, that it's your job to do the absolute best. Jay and I years ago had a long talk about how women's magazines are all about how you should be better, how you could do better, you could improve in a bunch of different ways. And depending on the kind of magazine, it's the kind of ways you should improve. Whereas men's magazines are like, you're amazing. Here's some ways to just be more amazing. You're good enough the way you are. Here's how to highlight that. Whereas a lot of women's magazines, especially 5 to 10 years ago, were focused on, you should be better at everything. So our world is filled with messages telling us, eat better, manage time better, improve your hair, your eyes, your waist, improve your kids' behavior, improve your household in a bunch of different ways. You should earn more money. You should buy better stuff. You should tidy the stuff that you bought. So those messages can be overwhelming, and they just lead to a constant kind of degeneration in how you feel about your self-worth, how you feel you're doing, and if you're doing good enough. I believe that we shouldn't just accept that we never feel good enough, that we shouldn't just decide, oh, well, this is how it is. I think we can accept that there's a lot of messages in the media, on Instagram, on Pinterest, even among friends, that tell us that we're not good enough. Accept that. There are messages that tell you that. Our world is filled with these messages, and then we reiterate to ourselves. We say it to ourselves inside our own heads. You're not good enough. You need to eat better, look better, tidy better. But I don't want to believe that it will be like this forever in our own heads. I don't believe that I need to just resign myself to this mindset of you're not good enough, you should always be better. I don't want to live like that. So I know those half replies that just said this is how it is, totally just meant to be encouraging and help me feel like I'm not alone, and they definitely helped with that. For me, I just don't want to live like this. It's not sustainable in this intensity. So just because the world tells you that you need to be better doesn't mean you have to tell yourself that you need to be better. You could tell yourself a different message. And here's the fun thing. You can tell those in your life a different message. If you learn to tell yourself a different message, you're going to be able to spread that throughout your life, to your friends, to your family, to your kids, to the people who interact with you in your business. That's why it was so important for me to work on not being so hard on myself, because how else can I talk to you about feeling worthy, feeling enough, feeling confident if I am constantly telling myself that I'm making mistakes, that I'm doing it wrong, that I should be better, that it's not good enough. So I'm moving forward with a belief that it doesn't have to be like this. Now, the second set of responses were, hey, challenge those negative thoughts, girl. Let's challenge them. Talk better to yourself. Here's how to. This was super interesting because I was honestly not even thinking about this as negative self-talk. I wasn't even thinking about it as negative. I was thinking like, I just have a running commentary all the time of what could be better, and it makes me feel bad. But it's almost like I thought the running commentary was good. Like, you can improve this way. This could be smoother next time. Optimize, streamline, improve, be better. However, improving and optimizing is great, and it's something that I do all the time in my business and I'm doing all the time in my life. But if the underlying message and the way it makes me feel is you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you don't deserve this, that's not helpful or useful. That's not going to help grow or improve any aspect of my life, and certainly not my mothering or my friending. I was telling myself these were not negative thoughts. They're just kind of insistent thoughts, but if I got better, I would stop having them. If I just would never make another parenting mistake, I just would never think this again. But when I realized, oh, it's insistent and it makes me feel bad, I was like, oh, that's what negative beliefs are, and I know what can help with this. In fact, when I am treating my anxiety, when I recognize that this is a version of anxious thoughts, I know what will help with that. Challenging the thoughts and rewriting them. This is a basic tenet of cognitive behavioral therapy, and studies show that cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the most effective therapies for dealing with anxiety and depression, so it can certainly help with some negative thoughts, even if it's not a clinical case. I've linked up a definition of cognitive behavioral therapy and anything else I mention, any podcast episodes or apps to use at tarswiger.com/podcast246. There you'll find the show notes, the written out version of everything I'm saying, the video, the audio, and links. So that's tarswiger.com/podcast246. So cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, has this concept of cognitive distortions. It's ways that you're seeing a situation through like a distorted glass. You're distorting the situation because of these unreal filters you're applying to it. So what you do is you recognize the distortion, then you rewrite the thought without the distortion. That's a very basic form of CBT. So I use an app that actually helps you check your thoughts. So I opened up my app, it's called Mood Notes, to see if the thought, you should be better at X, actually fits with any of the cognitive traps. Because to be honest, I thought like, oh, there's no cognitive distortions here. This is just fact that I say should have been able to record earlier. This is just fact that I should have stayed calmer throughout that parenting interaction. So Mood Notes makes this super simple. I've linked up to where you can find it, but my Starship captains told me it's only available on the iPhone, but if you're an Android user, you can sign up to be like a beta tester for the Android version. There are also other versions of what this does, so I'm going to walk you through what it does. So first, you write down the thought, then you look at a long list of cognitive distortions, which you can also find in the Wikipedia article for CBT that I link up. And the cognitive distortions that applied to my situation were the following. There's a lot of them. Negative filtering, which is where you filter out anything that's good and you only see the bad. It's negative filtering. Also, downplaying the positive, which is like when you not just don't see the positive, but you dismiss the positive qualities by telling yourself that they're unimportant or they do not count. So, oh yeah, that turned out great, right? Like I actually wrote 3 podcast episodes, but I'm saying that doesn't count because I didn't record before the yard work started. So that's dismissing the positive qualities. All or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking is it is either perfect or it's a failure. So either my child never throws a fit or hits, or I am a complete failure as a mother. Never mind that she had a whole life before she came to me. Never mind that she has her own feelings. Never mind that there are all these other environmental things that I have no control over. Either it's perfect or I'm a failure. Whew, that's intense, right? All or nothing thinking, that will mess you up. And then also blaming. So you either blame yourself or you blame others for anything that happens, even stuff we can't control. So I, of course, because I take responsibility for my actions, I'm always blaming myself, even for things I can't control. It's like I couldn't control the yard work, and yet I found a way to blame myself for the yard work. That's crazy. So, do you see how any of those distortions I just listed, and that's just some of like the 10 or 12 that there are, do you see how they can apply to your own thoughts when you're being hard on yourself? Probably yes. So, that, like, once you recognize a cognitive distortion, then you rewrite the thought without the cognitive distortion. Like, it is not my fault that they're doing yard work right now. I wrote 3 podcast episodes, and that's a positive of the situation. I should be proud of that. I'm recording despite the unexpected noise. That's a positive, right? That's the way that you'd rewrite it. Now, I talked about this on Instagram Live. And by the way, if you're like, how do I see these Instagram Lives? Because they sound like that's where all the fun stuff happens. Just follow me on Instagram. I'm at Swiger. And if you're not watching people's lives and stories, there's the little circles above the feed. Click on it. Click on my little face and you'll see my story. And if you're following me, but you're not ever seeing my stories, it's because you're not interacting with my posts. So like some posts, comment on some posts, click my face and my profile to watch my stories and comment on a story, and Instagram will know to show it to you more often. So that's just a little side note on stories. So I shared all this on an Instagram Live, and my friend Jolie pointed out something really big that I had been missing. She is in training to become a life coach, and it is working. Because she pointed out the thought that needs rewriting isn't just you should have been better at this. It's actually the belief that I even made a mistake to begin with. It's a belief that it was a mistake I did not record earlier. We don't know that that's a mistake. The thing is that she pointed out that I'm assuming wrongly that any unwanted outcome is because of some mistake I made. The other way to look at it is that you can't possibly know if you had done something different if you would get a different outcome. You can't control all outcomes through your actions alone. So if I had recorded earlier, and I know this for a fact, the FedEx guy came and my dog barked at the FedEx guy, there would have been some other noise. For example, maybe if you would have done one more Instagram post, you would have sold 2 more products. So you beat yourself up, you're hard on yourself, and you think, I didn't follow through with more Instagram posts. If I would have, everything in my business would have been better. But maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe nobody would have bought from that extra Instagram post. You don't know that. You can't assume you know the outcome and then beat yourself up over what you don't know. So the way to rewrite that thought with CBT is it was a mistake that I X. Then the cognitive distortion might be blaming, because you're blaming yourself for something that wasn't in your control. Or it might be fortune telling. That's another cognitive distortion where you think you know the outcomes of all possible situations. Like you think you know if you would have done another Instagram post, you would have made more sales. You don't know that. There's no way to know that. So a rewritten thought is I don't know that it was a mistake that I did X. I can try something different next time. Or I wish I would have posted on Instagram, but I don't know what those outcomes would have been. I'll try next time. Instead of doing 2 posts about a product, I'll do 3. Now, when I was talking about this with Starship, the another aspect of this came up that I want to hit on before we just are like, okay, move forward, rewrite your thoughts. And that's depression. Because depression lies. It tells you, you suck. This will never be better. It is your fault it's not going better, and nothing can be done / you are not capable of fixing it because you suck. Now, that's a cognitive distortion that you could rewrite. But if you have clinical depression, just rewriting your thoughts might not be enough. Or if you have clinical depression, they might be so overwhelming that all you're doing with your life is rewriting your thoughts. You may need an intervention from a specialist. I do want to be careful here. Just because you're having those thoughts doesn't mean you're clinically depressed. But if they feel like you have no hope of anything for more than several days in a row, you can get help for this. I'm not telling you this because you suck. A lot of people learn that they have some symptoms of depression and they're like, oh my gosh, it's because I suck. No, that's a depression. You can get help for this. And if you're not sure where to start, and I didn't for a long time, start by going to your primary care physician or your family doctor and explain to them what's going on. Make a note. This is why the Mood Notes app helps, of what days you're feeling hopeless. You can also just on your calendar do like a smiley face or a frowny face, and like the intensity of the frowny face or smiley face. Start paying attention to how many days in a row it happens, and I'll tell you, whenever I enter a depression, I'm not able to tell how long it's been going on. I kind of tell myself every day for a couple weeks, oh, this is just today. Oh, this is just today. Or this is just hormonal. Oh, I'm on day 1 of my cycle. Oh, I'm on day 15 of my cycle. When I get to the point where I'm like, I've told myself every day of my cycle that it's just this one day, then I realize what it is. So tracking it somewhere can be helpful before you go to your primary care physician or your family doctor. But but you don't have to wait till you track, and you don't have to wait till you can see your doctor. I suggest that doctor because so often you can get in sooner. They can recommend a therapist, or if you have a therapist, go to your therapist and talk to them. Or if your friend has a therapist, make an appointment, go tell them about it. They can suggest an intervention if one is necessary, or they have a measuring tool. They can figure out if it's clinical or if it's just something you're going through right now, if it's situational. So more than anything, I want you to know that you're not alone, and it won't always be like this. Whether this is just a passing stage while you're new at something, or whether it's something more longer term that you're dealing with, it won't always be like this. If it's hard and you think it's because you suck, you do not have to accept that as truth. That is not the truth. A lot of things are hard. And although we can always be growing and changing, that's not because you suck. That's just how life works. So if you feel inundated with messages that tell you you're not enough and that you need to be better in order to be more worthy, you're not alone in feeling that way. You can unsubscribe from or turn off some of those messages. You can decide to unfollow people who make you feel crappy, even if it's me. You can decide to not listen to podcasts or not watch shows, or unsubscribe from magazines or Pinterest boards that make you feel like you're not enough. You can start to notice when those messages come at you and challenge them right then. This is actually something studies have found is one of the best ways to shift the negative effect of advertising on young girls, is to talk about what the advertising is saying and is selling them right when they see it. And I'm betting that this is going to work on yourself. So something like, I just the other day said to Jay, oh, this ad is telling me that I would look younger if the whites of my eyes were brighter. Apparently, now I need to worry about the whites of my eyes instead of how much I love the people in my life. No, thank you. Just that kind of sucks the power out of that message. And so you can do that if you have the energy for it, if that's where the messages are coming from. And also, if it's on Instagram, if it's on social media, unfollow those people. If you followed them for inspiration, but now you're just like, oh my gosh, they've got it all together and I don't, unfollow them. When the time comes, like we talked about last week in the seasons of your business, when you're in a time of wanting inspiration, you'll find more people for inspiration. Maybe those same people you'll want to follow again in the future. But they're not making you feel great now, unfollow, unsubscribe, get rid of it from your life. And if you are hard on yourself, you are not alone. Take a breath, take a big drink of water, and rewrite the thought that is troubling you. Rewrite that it was a mistake that you didn't do that. Rewrite that you should be perfect and never lose your temper. Just so you know, I think you're doing an amazing job in your life. You're here, you're listening, you got up this morning, you're keeping the people in your life alive and loved. You are enough as you are right now. We have a super enthusiastic week and you're just filled with knowing that you are worthy and you are enough.